Hey guys, I have a very important and relevant video for you today. On June 24th, 2021, the Polish Parliament unanimously passed an act amending the Code of Administrative Procedure. The amendment results from the necessity to adjust the law to the judgment of a constitutional tribunal from 6 years ago. The new law sets a time limit of 30 years for challenging the validity of an administrative decision of a gross violation of law. This change is intended to end fraud and irregularities in property restitution in Warsaw, Krakow, and other cities. The Polish Senate still needs to vote on this bill. Unlike the parliament, a leftist opposition controls the Senate. However, voting no on this bill would be wildly politically unpopular. It could happen though. The upshot of this bureaucrat gang action that closes the door on property reprivatization claims that have been extraordinarily unpopular in Poland have been clogging up the courts with often dubious claims and have been used to exert political pressure on Poland in increasingly dangerous historical revisionist ways. Let me explain. After World War II, the communists, as they do, seized private property and made it public. Reprivatization claims are being made, but when they are successful, they hurt Polish people who did nothing wrong. Let me paraphrase you a typical story from The Guardian. On a cold day in January, Marta came back from a trip to the shops to find that she was unable to enter her Warsaw apartment. It turned out that her apartment building had just been reprivatized, meaning that the heirs to the building's pre-war owners had successfully claimed it back from the city authorities after it had been nationalized. The new landlords were determined that the existing tenants should leave immediately. Although her disabled husband and her 11-year-old son were allowed back occasionally, Marta was not. 6 months later, the property was demolished and sold to a developer. So Polish people do not like reprivatization. This new law has made international headlines because it makes Jewish property claims impossible. We need to talk about so-called Jewish restitution claims on Poland. Before World War II, Jews owned a lot of property in Poland. This is what Warsaw looked like when the Red Army entered. Over 90% of all buildings were destroyed. What Jewish restitution entities want is the ability to claim that any building that was built on land that was owned by a Jew pre-war should not have gone to the Polish state, but should be owned by Jews. Homes, shops, churches. Not only would this negatively affect individual Polish families who saved up to buy a house, it would also cede major power to new foreign landlords. It is a very unpopular idea in Poland. There are many arguments Poles can make against Jewish restitution claims. Some point out that everyone lost property under communism. The children of nobles and magnates aren't going to get their estates back, so why should Jews get special treatment? Law and Justice make the true claim that since Polish Jews were Polish citizens, why exactly should hairless property be passed to the ADL instead of Poland? Additionally, the law that America wants Poland to have is not the law that America has. If someone dies in New York City and doesn't have any children and doesn't have a will, their property does not get ceded to their ethnic group, it goes to the state. Some prefer the rule of law argument, stating that the issue of restitution have already been resolved by the signing of, quote, the agreement between the government of the United States of America and the government of Polish People's Republic regarding claims of nationals of the United States on July 16, 1960. It stipulates that Poland would pay the USA $40 million to cover the claims of American citizens. The agreement was ratified by the US Congress and the Polish Sejm. To fulfill its obligations, Poland disbursed $40 million to, quote, completely settle and satisfy all claims of U.S. citizens, both natural and legal persons, to the Polish government for any property that was confiscated by the government. This sum was to be distributed at the discretion of the U.S. government. The agreement further states, after the entry into force of this agreement, the United States government will not submit to the Polish government, nor will it support any claims of U.S. citizens to the Polish government. End quote. I prefer another argument. I do not want to become a Palestinian. I do not want foreigners knocking on my door telling me I need to send a rent check to Tel Aviv or that the ADL doesn't approve what the local church teaches. I do not want my country to be under the thumb of foreign landlords. Now let's discuss the reaction to this news in Israel. Yair Lapid, the head of the largest party forming the new coalition in Israel, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and in accordance with the coalition agreement, the Prime Minister of Israel in 2023 to 2025 tweeted out that, quote, "It is not the first time that Poles try to hide what was done in Poland during the Holocaust," end quote. I am now showing the Polish fact-checker response to an infamous tweet that Mr. Lapid made about this subject in the past. The Israeli embassy in Poland made an unpopular but expected statement in support of hairless claims. It is worth noting that the newly announced Israeli ambassador to Poland is a Moscow-born son of a Red Army officer who speaks German and Russian but not Polish. For Israelis watching this, I suggest to you, if you believe that it is immoral and unjust for Poland not to give Jewish property to the Jewish community, do you believe that it is immoral for Israelis not to give property that was once owned by Palestinians to the Palestinians? If not, could you explain why? This is an evolving story, and with the new Biden administration and the new Israeli administration, there will be a lot of development. Please subscribe to the channel to stay updated. And in conclusion, when it comes to Jewish claims, we should say no and ask about Israel. Do widzenia.